Thank you for choosing to listen to a story that may bring a lump to your throat, move your heart, and deepen your belief in the extraordinary bond between humans and dogs. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to hit like, share it to spread kindness, and subscribe so you won't miss the next unforgettable journey. Now let the story begin. Raven's Crest in winter is both breathtaking and brutal. Snow falls thick, covering every trace of human presence. The forest trails vanish beneath a glittering white blanket, and the wind howls through the trees like a warning. Only the rangers dare to enter these woods when the sun barely rises and the cold bites into bone. Eli Parker, 39, is one of the few who call this place home. As the head ranger with nearly 15 years of experience, he knows every rock, every hidden trail, and even the quietest sounds among the trees. He's not a man of many words, but everyone knows if someone goes missing in the hundreds of hectares of wilderness, Eli will be the first to go after them. But then, Eli vanished 3 days ago. Eli left the ranger station to inspect the northern edge of the reserve, a place recently showing signs of illegal entry, freshly cut branches, remnants of a campfire and disturbed soil, like someone was digging for something. He brought his usual gear: radio map, rescue kit, nothing alarming. Nothing dangerous by his judgment, but by sunset as darkness swallowed Raven's Crest, his radio went silent. The next day, the entire unit tried to contact Eli. No response. He didn't return to the cabin. No one heard his voice on the emergency channel. Some said maybe he got snowed in or his gear failed, but everyone knew Eli was meticulous. If he wasn't responding, something was wrong. A search team was dispatched combing through nearby trails and outposts, but the heavy snow had erased all footprints. The only sign left was a snapped pine branch across the northern entrance, a forgotten warning in the wilderness. While people grew more hopeless, one creature trusted its instincts. Orion, a Belgian Malinois once trained for military operations, now specialized in high-risk forest search missions, sensed something the humans didn't. Since retraining at Raven's Crest, Orion had bonded with no one except Eli. Between them was something invisible, unspoken, but deeply understood. On the morning of the third day since Eli disappeared, Orion was mid-training with the team, but as a gust of icy wind swept through the forest, carrying a scent only his sharp nose could detect, he stopped, lifted his head, and stared northward. No one had time to react. In a blink, Orion broke formation, dashed through the snow, and disappeared between the trees like a brown arrow, piercing the white trainers called whistles blue. Useless, Orion didn't follow commands. He followed his heart. Rangers tried to deploy a drone to track him, but strong winds and thick terrain disrupted the signal. The team had no choice but to wait and hope. In that freezing silence, only one dog raced across frozen ridges and icy ravines, tracking the scent of sweat metal and blood. Every step Orion took was a heartbeat of hope for the team. No one knew if Eli was still alive, but they knew if there was still a chance, it was running through the snow like a lone Belgian Malinois. The wind screamed through the old pines, whispering like forest spirits. Snow began to fall heavier, covering the world in a cold, indifferent white. And through it all, Orion kept moving, not even pausing, not even trembling. He didn't know exhaustion. Every stride was a silent call, every breath a flicker of hope. He wasn't running on training, but on something more profound. A bond forged in silence with the only man who ever gave him a second chance, Eli Parker. Then suddenly a familiar scent drifted through the wind. Orion froze, his nose twitched. The forest held its breath, or in blood. Human scent, cold and faint, like a soul about to slip away. Orion bolted. Eli Parker no longer felt time. The cold had seeped into his bones. Blood had crusted beneath the torn skin. His wrist was shackled to the trunk of an ancient tree by a rusted chain, its metal embedded deep in bark and flesh. His body was nearly frozen. His mind slipped one day. 3, he wasn't sure anymore, only remembered a sound behind him. A blow, then darkness. And after that, laughter. Faceless, nameless. Then silence. Eli knew he was dying. But still, he forced his eyes open just one more time to see the sky one last time. And that's when he saw those eyes, those familiar amber eyes. Orion. He didn't bark, didn't panic. Orion approached Eli as if entering a sacred ritual. Quietly, gently, he lay beside the man, pressing his warm body against Eli's frozen frame like a living blanket. His breath touched Eli's skin, thawing a layer of ice on his cheek. Then slowly and softly, Orion began licking Eli's wrist, the one bound tightly in rusted chains. His tongue couldn't undo the iron shackles, but every tender lick carried a message. I'm here, don't give up. The trembling in Eli's body began to grow stronger, his core reacting to the warmth. One heartbeat, then another, and another. Orion raised his head. He knew it was time to call for help. A sound came through across the search team's communication devices, faint but unmistakable. A long, deep howl, low in pitch, and filled with urgency, the kind only specially trained rescue dogs are taught to make when in distress. The team leader looked up, wide-eyed. It's Orion. They raced toward the signal, cutting through thick snow and scaling a narrow ravine, an area no one had thought to search. And then they saw it, a man chained to a tree, gaunt, pale, but his eyes were open, and beside him a Malinois lay still, eyes alert, ready to fight if anyone made the wrong move. They unshackled Eli. A medic placed fingers on his neck, weak pulse but alive. He was rushed back to the station on a sledge stretcher. Orion didn't leave his side, not even for a moment. That entire night, Eli was warmed, rehydrated, and stabilized. Many called it a miracle. In that brutal cold, no one believed he could have survived, not without a dog's unwavering loyalty and love. When Eli finally regained consciousness, his eyes were hazy, his mind foggy. Do you remember who did this to you? A deputy asked. Eli frowned. Images flickered in his mind. Shadows, a gust of wind, a strange laugh, but no face, no name. It's blurry, he whispered. Just a blow, and then darkness. Orion was still there when Eli opened his eyes again. His head rested by the foot of the bed, eyes calm now, watchful but peaceful. Eli reached out, trembling, and gently stroked Orion's head. You found me, didn't you, boy? He murmured. Orion didn't reply. He just closed his eyes, tail flicking ever so slightly. At that moment, Eli knew whoever had done this was still out there, but he would never be alone again, because in the cold, in the dark, in the silence, one creature chose not to walk away. Light filtered through the infirmary window. After 3 days in the unforgiving cold and long nights in the wilderness, Eli Parker finally returned. He lay on an old iron bed, blankets pulled to his chin. His body ached, but worse was the emptiness in his head. The memory of the attack is gone, like someone had wiped it clean. Only one image remained perfectly intact: Orion, lying beside him in the snow, keeping him alive with nothing but his warmth. After moving to the central station to recover, Eli quietly peeled off his torn, mud-covered ranger uniform. When a staff member handed him a bag of recovered belongings from the scene, Eli noticed something odd: a small, circular piece of metal tucked into the lining of his jacket. It had been embedded, carefully stitched beneath an added layer of fabric. It wasn't part of his standard gear. Eli frowned. A tracking device, he asked. The technician studied the object carefully, then looked up and confirmed, personal tracking device, not commercial grade. This one's for covert surveillance. Do you know who planted it? Eli clenched his fist. No. 3 days later, when his body had recovered enough to leave the infirmary, Eli began reviewing the paperwork he had been handling before the attack. Among them was a file requesting temporary logging access in Raven's Crest, a request he distinctly remembered never approving. And yet the system showed a full clearance. Signature stamps, even his name. Everything looked official. He handed the file to his supervisor and asked for a forensic signature analysis. Conclusion: highly sophisticated forgery. Eli felt a chill in his chest that no amount of blankets could ease. Someone had manipulated the system, used his name to greenlight illegal logging in one of the last untouched wilderness preserves. The news sent ripples of shock through the ranger station. An internal investigation was launched, and one name surfaced. Marcus Hale. Marcus wasn't a stranger to Eli. He had once been a mentor, an experienced deputy ranger who had trained him during his earliest days. Calm, resolute, and well-respected, Marcus had always been someone others trusted. But the deeper they dug, the more the cracks began to show. Marcus's duty logs aligned perfectly with the time the forged paperwork was processed and with the insertion of the tracking device into Eli's coat. Financial traces pointed to off-the-record transactions with a logging firm previously exposed for environmental violations in other states. A young investigator didn't sugarcoat it. We have reason to believe Marcus didn't just help facilitate the breach, he may have marked you for removal. Eli said nothing. He looked down and stroked Orion's back, the dog lying quietly at his feet. I'll ask him myself. The meeting took place far from the station in a quiet rest cabin deep in the woods. Marcus had been summoned under the pretense of a post-incident safety evaluation. Eli arrived first with Orion by his side. "You're looking better," Marcus said as he stepped in, his voice warm. Eli didn't answer right away. He looked directly at the man who was once his most trusted colleague. "Marcus, who planted the tracker in my coat." The air thickened. Marcus didn't deny it. He just sighed, a long, heavy breath. "I didn't think they'd go that far. The ones with the money, the ones who see trees as nothing but dollar signs." Eli's fists tightened. "And me, what was I, just something in the way?" Marcus didn't respond. That's when Orion stood up, ears high, eyes locked on Marcus as if he understood it all. Eli turned his gaze away. "You once taught me that rangers are guardians of the irreplaceable. So tell me, Marcus, what did you trade that principle for?" "A few forged signatures." After the meeting, Marcus was suspended and placed under federal investigation. But the damage he had done ran deeper than any forged document. Eli returned to his now empty office. Stacks of reports, maps of the forest are pinned neatly to the wall. Everything looked the same except the way it had felt inside. He had once believed in the system, in conservation, in the brotherhood of rangers. But now that belief was shaking or cracked. Only one thing remained solid. He looked down at Orion. The companion who had crossed the forest for him, warmed him through the cold, and never once left his side. "We won't let this happen again," Eli whispered. Orion looked up, tail gently thudding against the wooden floor. No words were needed. His presence was enough to remind Eli that there was still something worth fighting for. Night fell fast over Raven's Crest, cold and heavy, like a question mark dangling in the pines. Snow began to fall slow and silent. But what unsettled Eli wasn't the weather but the air itself, too still, too quiet. Orion lay under the desk and ears alert. His working dog instincts were never wrong. Jo Vance, a young officer only months into her assignment, reviewed a stack of reports in the comms room. Eli stood and refilled his mug with black coffee, eyes never leaving the security monitors. Suddenly the screen flickered. Then it went black. "Jo!" Eli shouted. She looked up, panic in her eyes. The whole station's lost power. Before they could regain their composure, a faint explosion echoed in the distance. A flash of red light spilt through the frosted windows. They had arrived. No warning, no threats. A group of unknown assailants, fully armed, descended on the ranger station like shadows in the snow. They didn't search aimlessly. They knew exactly where to go. Every room, every server, every storage unit. Eli immediately understood. This wasn't a robbery. It was a cleanup operation. "They're here to erase everything," he said, eyes scanning the station layout pinned to the wall. Jo zipped up her jacket, loading her sidearm. "What's the plan?" "We split up. I'll hold the server room. Jo, you secure the archives, Orion." There was no need to finish the sentence. Orion was already standing. He let out a low growl, amber eyes locked and steely. Gunfire rang out from the rear courtyard. One intruder had tried climbing the wall, but Orion got to him first. No barking, no chaos, just precise silent force trained to immobilize block escape routes and hold targets without a sound. Meanwhile, Eli pushed toward the server room. He heard the sharp clatter of a keyboard. Someone was inside trying to wipe the files. He threw the door open. Marcus Hale, the traitor, wore a ranger's uniform, but his hands were stained with fuel and soot, clear signs of intent to burn the servers. "Don't do this, Marcus," Eli growled. Hale turned a faint, resigned smile on his lips. "I don't have a choice anymore." "Yes, you do. Let the truth speak for itself." Marcus shook his head. "You're too naive, Eli. You don't know who they are." "Maybe not, but I know who I am." Eli didn't wait for another word. The butt of his unloaded pistol struck hard. Marcus collapsed. Eli bound him with a safety harness, snapped a photo of the hard drive he'd tried to destroy, and secured the evidence. Across the station, Jo Vance crouched behind a filing shelf, breathing steady, pistol drawn. Two more intruders were searching the archive room. The first one passed her unaware. One swift strike, he crumpled to the floor without a sound. The second spotted her and fired wildly. Jo dove sideways, slamming a steel door to mislead him. When he turned, she was already behind him. A quick blow to the neck, he dropped Jo, exhaled sharply but kept her calm. She spotted a mobile data transfer device on the table nearby. The intruders had been copying files. She yanked the memory card out. "You're not erasing anything tonight." Outside, Orion had already subdued 3 intruders. Now he blocked the path of 2 more trying to flee on a snowmobile. A thunderous growl erupted. The driver panicked, hitting the throttle, but his headlights caught those fierce golden eyes. Orion didn't flinch. He stood his ground. The driver swerved. The snowmobile tilted violently. Joe had sliced the front tire. Police backup arrived just minutes later as the snow began to fall heavily again. Marcus Hale and the attackers were taken into custody. The initial reports confirmed an attempt to destroy evidence tied to illegal logging permits and an organized threat against key witnesses. Inside the ranger station, Orion lay quietly, chest rising and falling with calm resolve. Eli knelt beside him, placing a hand on the dog's head. "No one got away because of you." Joe stepped in, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. "Chief," she said softly, "we saved everything." Eli nodded, his eyes drifting toward the snow-covered forest outside. The night had settled, peaceful at last, but he knew this battle was only the beginning. And that was the story of Eli Parker and the rescued dog Orion, a journey of survival, betrayal, resistance, and ultimately healing. When Marcus Hale was arrested and the organization dismantled, many believed Eli would become a national hero. But he refused all honors. He didn't need medals. All he wanted was a place where the forgotten could be remembered, the broken could be loved, and trust could be rebuilt. That's how Ash Ridge Haven came to life. No flashy signs, no surveillance cameras, just a shelter, a patch of forest, and a dog named Orion now sits at the gate daily, quietly waiting for lost souls to come home. Some heroes don't need the spotlight. They need a second chance, a loyal companion, and a place to call home. Thank you for staying with us to the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who might need a little hope today. We'll be back with more stories about loyalty, courage, and lives that refuse to give up. With heartfelt thanks.